Welcome to the afternoon session of the second day of BIOMEET. We will start now our roundtable with the theme Emerging Trends in Biotechnology Investment. I would like to call David Braga Malta from Pictet to moderate the session. And the panelists will be Alexandre Esteban, da Fundação da Caixa, David Cristina from Vesalius Biocapital, Isabel Rodrigues from Iberis Capital, and Stephan Moraes from Indico Capital. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. How much time do we have? 1 hour and a half? Oh, there, perfect. Okay, good. Thank you so much. So it's a pleasure to be here. I think a very interesting panel for us to discuss here. I was thinking back to, well, when some of us started companies in Portugal, somewhat almost 20 years ago. I would say none of you did investments back in the time, and there was no community to support healthcare companies in the country. So I think it's a big evolution over the last decades. I was trying to think, but I would believe we have record high amounts of money for biotech funding and healthcare funding in Portugal, which I think should be exciting for the ecosystem and gives all of you an opportunity to go ahead and transform some of the scientific findings into products. We'll balance a bit in the panel because I think we have a mix of more pure biotech investors, people that focus more on the relationship between academia and getting things out of academia before some funds invest, and I think we can even have a debate if that's the best model or not, and what we see elsewhere. People that do both, that can invest across, and Stephan, on your side, you guys are more on the non-regulated product side of the ecosystem, which is, I would say, one of the fastest growing area of healthcare investing for sure in the US. And I think the goal here is to provide everyone in the audience with what we believe are the fundable areas, what excites you guys, what you're looking for, what you are not looking for, and what makes you annoyed when you listen to someone coming through the door and say immediately, okay, this is a no, because you just mentioned that. So that's the goal for today. I would eventually give you, each one of you, 1 minute for you to introduce yourselves and to tell everyone what you do and what your companies do, and then we take it from there if that makes sense. So we'll start with you, Stephan.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here. So Indico Capital Partners, we are a fund with 53 companies in our portfolio that have collectively raised $2.5 billion, over $2.5 billion from investors from all over the world. We primarily invest, as you said, in digital, so software as a service, marketplaces, and obviously one of the growing areas is digital health. And we're based in Lisbon, we're 15 people, and yeah, that's it.
Hello everyone, I'm Isabel, I'm an associate at Iberis Capital. We are generalist private equity and venture capital. We have more than 600 million assets under management, most of them in the area of venture capital. As generalistic, we don't have a specific focus in biotech or medtech, but we have several cases and examples in our portfolio of companies in these areas, and that's something that for sure interests us a lot. We are based here in Portugal. We have more than 30 people working for Iberis, so very happy to hear from you.
Yeah, so it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It's a very special occasion because it's the first time that you and I, both Davids, are in the same place at the same time, because most people think there's only one David doing biotech, so this is a chance for them to know there's actually two of us. We're frequently confused with each other. So I work for... Which is bad for... no, I think it's bad for you also. I think it's bad for both of us. So I work for Vesalius Biocapital. We're a fund out of... Luxembourg. Our offices are in Belgium, France. I live in Portugal. We have around 400 million under management over the course of four funds. We invest in digital health and biotech. We initially were more focused on biotech. Now we're doing a little bit of both, with most of the capital going into biotech. We're a small team of, I think we're up to 7 people now, investment team, and that's it.
All right. So thank you very much for the opportunity as well. I come from La Caixa Foundation, and we are a philanthropic institution based in Barcelona. We're a little bit different from the rest of the colleagues here at the panel. What we do is we run different activities in many different areas. Of course, we have the social area, we have also the cultural area. We run different museums. But I come from the research area. So there we have different initiatives. For example, we have fellowships for researchers, PhD students or postdoctoral researchers. We have also initiatives to support research, like research projects, basic clinical translational projects. And we have also an initiative, I will talk about that a bit later, which is called Caixa Impulse. And with that initiative, we support innovation projects coming from academia.
Thank you so much, guys. And just to complete the round, I manage the healthcare fund for Pictet, the Swiss financial group, just focusing on healthcare companies across the spectrum. I would start with a challenge for all of you, and sorry, I know we aligned the panel, but half of you know me and I won't follow any of that. So if you were to be sitting on that side, where would you be spending your energy, correct? So what are the challenges that you believe one should be dedicating their time and career for, and things that eventually you would back and give a little bit the reasoning for that? Which areas you feel people should be focusing, people should be spending energy, so that, well, the goal of biotechnology is to make human life better in the end. So which ones would be the ones that you'd feel more excited about?
And this is if we were researchers like them. Okay. Well, for one thing, if I was those people, there'd be more of us here, because this is where the money is, supposedly. I remember back in my day, when I had a startup, you had one too. If there were an investor in the room, we would try as hard as we could to be in that room. But what am I excited about these days in biotech? Well, I think immune modulation is something I'm very excited about. Oncology, less so. I feel like we've done a lot of progress there, and there's a lot of competition. It's fairly crowded, and also, frankly, there's still a lot to do, but a lot has already been done. I'm excited about that, I think. Immune modulation is something I'm very, very excited about. Some things around neurodegenerative disease I'm excited about, but it's a very difficult space to treat. So some novel approaches around that area I'm also very interested in. So I don't know. If you have anything in that area, feel free to talk to me.
Less in the specific fields, more like as a generic advice. I would focus a lot in understanding if there is actually potential in the markets for the product I'm researching from what I'm doing. What we see a lot, it's great researchers, great projects, but then when we evaluate how can this project scale and if there is any appetite in the market for that product, that technology, sometimes we have doubts. And this happens specifically at the first stages. So in more generic terms, I would focus in understanding, is there any market value, market potential on this, or is this like a great idea? Actually, it's very interesting, but it's more for academia and less as a product, as a business.
Well, where should I start? I think that, number one, I don't know how many people are in the conference, but clearly, there's not a lot of interest in this panel because it's... And that's surprising, and I think it shows a lot. It shows that I think people in general, our experience with researchers has been that they are extremely good at what they do. They have a huge lack of awareness of how to make it happen. And that starts with, understanding the market, as you say. So is this fundable because the market is huge, or is it just groundbreaking but there's no market? That is absolutely fundamental. And the second thing is, how am I going to fund it? And I think there is over these last decade and a half that I've been sort of dealing with these types of funding issues, I've seen that again and again, the sort of device of the grants is just too big. I mean, people are so hooked on grants that they only know how to deal with grants. And that leads people to lose huge opportunities. Number one, they don't know who to speak with. They don't know who the investors are. I'm not even saying in Portugal. I'm saying globally, right? If you're doing something specific, you just go to ChatGPT. Before it was Google. You go to ChatGPT and say, who are the best venture capital funds in the world that invest in this that I do. So I'm always mesmerized why people say, oh, but there's no capital in Portugal. Who cares about the capital in Portugal? There's massive amounts of capital everywhere. There are investors which are excellent and actually know what they're talking about in all your domains, almost all your domains. If you're really world class, if you really have a market, there will be money. So I cannot listen again to, oh, there's not enough capital in the market. There is a lot of capital in the market. The problem might be that you don't know where to look for it, right? Grants are important, but there's a phase where you need to sort of move to the next step. And you have to surround yourself with the right people, the right investors. And one of the things is also, why do people get in touch if we don't do that kind of thing, right? You just check the website. Don't send me stuff about molecules. We don't do molecules. It's an easy Google search. I'm just saying this because it's just, it shows the lack of awareness by the researchers. That are so good in researching their own thing and they cannot go beyond and understand that they need to supply a business model of the investors. There's a lot of capital. There's amazing research in Portugal. And I cannot hear again that there's no capital. There's global capital. Best researchers in the world find great capital in the United States, in North Europe, wherever it is. So my advice is, forget Portugal. Forget the investors. Just check for the best investors in the world in whatever you're doing. If you have a product, you'll get it. Now, maybe you don't have a product. Maybe there is no market. And so you have to decide whether, like you're saying, it's just a research and that's great, or you actually have something which is world-class. There's not a problem with lack of capital. There's a lot of capital.
Alexandre, so what are you guys looking for when you sponsor those researchers as a foundation?
Actually, it's a focus a little bit different. Since we are a philanthropic institution, what we offer is non-dilutive grants. Although we have a reimbursable scheme. So
this was not personal.
I know, I understand. So we offer this reimbursable scheme, so we make sure that the grant goes to where it has to go. But it's not only that. Since we are focusing on this academic environment, because we work with universities, hospitals, and we work with research centers, we don't work with companies directly. So it's just we go to previous stages. Sometimes it's very difficult to just give the money and just let researchers do their thing, because obviously they go back to the path of research. They don't take the path of tech transfer. So that's why we think it's very important not only to provide financial support, but also to provide like non-financial support. So for that reason, we provide like a non-financial support that has 3 legs. The first one is training. So as you were mentioning, it's very important that they know what they have to look for and where to find, for example, for other sources of funding, or to understand some innovation terms, or get familiarized with some concepts of innovation. We also, or one thing that it catches our attention quite often with that we see quite often, which is how to talk to an investor. For example, communication skills, how to prepare an elevator pitch, and things like that. And also we have like a mentorship program. So we offer them a mentor who is assigned to each project, and they work side by side during all the participation of the program, of the project in our program. And we have like a pool of more than 600 collaborators with an international profile, and they are offered to these projects for specific consultancies on aspects on their development plan or preparing their business model. So the idea is that, okay, so we provide them with some financial support, but of course you have some milestones that you have to achieve, because you have to like to earn the different payments of that grant. You have to reimburse, you have to return that grant if you become a success case in the future. So it's not something that we give for free. So it's not a loan, but at least you have to give us that back so we can reinvest in the program and help other projects. And the other thing is that, okay, we give you the support and the guidance so that you don't make mistakes, or you don't make many mistakes, and you know what to do with that money. So you don't go back to hiring another postdoc and running more experiments and buying fungible for more experiments. So you spend that money on something that it's related to building value for your project.
And can I do a quick follow-up with you? So why don't you then get involved in the company side of it? Or there is a portion of La Caixa that does?
Well, in La Caixa group, so we're a huge entity. I didn't mention the number of workers, but we're a lot of people. We have a venture capital firm. It's called Criteria Bioventures. And their main focus is investing in companies. So they have like 3 sectors. They have artificial intelligence, they have industry, and they have life sciences. And of course, we have a lot of collaboration with the team from life sciences. And that's what they do. So what we decided to do is just to focus on previous stages. So try to help researchers that have like very nice results in the lab. They have very interesting discoveries that could address very important medical needs, to help them like transfer them outside the laboratory. Because sometimes they are just kept in the drawer just to make publications, and then there's no impact for patients or the society in the future. So that's why we decided to focus on that specific stage, fill that gap, help them to take the first steps into the valley of death, and then after that, prepare them enough so that they can knock on doors of different agents in the ecosystem where they can get further support for their projects and to incorporate companies in the future.
Great, very clear. You guys can prepare questions if you want, so we'll open to the audience at a certain point in time. I would eventually flip, and I'll start with Stephan on, I would guess the biotech ecosystem even existed before the tech ecosystem of entrepreneurship. There was a wave of biotech companies, I would even say 25, 30 years ago. But if you compare both now, the image is quite different from one or the other. You invest a bit in both, but we've been in the beginnings of the ecosystem before. So what's the difference? What you see is missing or not? So if you look at both ecosystems, why did tech scale so much, and why didn't biotech?
Well, I mean, for a start, there are macro issues, right? I mean, I think that there was some developments on the tech side that made it, software is much easier to scale, right? It's easier to correct software. It's easier to send out an update, right? You cannot really update a molecule over the internet yet. And so it's harder. And so there was a huge tech revolution over the last decade and a half, 2 decades, since the internet, and then the mobile revolution, then the software as a service, and then blockchain, and now AI, in generative AI. And that was not the same in biotech, although of course we are looking at huge transformations in terms of longevity, in terms of the conjunction between AI and the development of new therapies and new molecules, of course. Then I think that's the international part. But then I think that on what I saw in the ecosystem here was that the entrepreneurs on the engineering side, they were kind of more aware of what was happening internationally. We saw, and we were lucky to have invested in most of the unicorns on the tech side coming out of Portugal, and these were people that basically moved to the US or established themselves very quickly, both in the US and locally. They surrounded themselves with amazing investors and amazing employees and partners and co-founders. And you could see that, for example, when you are negotiating with a tech founder and a science founder. Obviously, they're all very smart, but I think the difference is the tech founders seem to be more aware of what we do. And I think when you negotiate with a researcher, people seem super suspicious of everything. They're very curious, but they're very suspicious. They're very far away from the business side, further away from the business side than the engineers. And that makes it very, very hard, because sometimes they do not surround themselves with the right lawyers, so that makes it even harder because the lawyers don't understand. So then you're discussing stuff which is useless forever. And essentially, there's less mobility. So you see the tech founders going, where do I have to go to get the money, the real money? Not all the money is the same, right? It's very different. There's types of money and types of money. There's real added value capital, and there's capital that adds nothing. In fact, it's detrimental. And what I saw was that the tech founders were like, do I have to go to live in San Francisco? I'll get on a plane tomorrow morning. And that didn't happen with the Portuguese founders on the science side, unfortunately, because it's not like we had less science than less engineering. Quite the contrary. In fact, the depth of science in Portugal is way deeper than the depth of engineering. So the base material for entrepreneurship is much better on the research side than in engineering, but the attitude is totally different. The go-getting, the ambition to be number one in the world is much, much higher on the engineering side, maybe for lack of awareness or something like that. And then, of course, it's easier to set up funds for tech than funds for biotech. Until recently, we didn't really have a biotech specific fund locally. So there's no capital. You might have great entrepreneurs, but if you don't have local capital, contrary to what I was just saying before, you do need some local capital. Because at the beginning, of course, you need the grants, and then you need some start with local capital for the first 2, 3, 4, 5 million, which is another difference. In engineering, you start with 500,000, 1 million, and that's already plenty. And sometimes to actually get things going in biotech, you need 2, 3, 5, 10 million. And so if you don't have the local capital, that's also very difficult. So it's just an ecosystem that has taken much longer, but I'm a believer. I think that we have the base science, the PhDs, the researchers, which are world-class. They just need to be a little bit more globally focused, not only in terms of research, but in terms of capital, and globally mobile, and surround themselves with the right investors. Easier said than done.
And David, how do you define the chicken and the egg here? You are kind of like in and out, but you do live in Portugal, so...
I do, and I've been connected to the ecosystem here for many years. So I think my view on why tech scaled faster is tech is easier to scale because it needs less infrastructure than biotech. So biotech needs labs, it needs a lot of know-how around it, knowledge around clinical trial structures. It needs many things that make it harder to scale. It has many more moving pieces that you need to put into in place for you to actually be able to build a successful company. And for many years, I don't think those pieces were in place. I mean, you and I discussed this extensively, and for many years, I thought that the only solution for the Portuguese ecosystem was some sort of venture creation structure, similar to what I think you guys are doing, that would get the IP very early, because, mind you, from the research paper to the Series A is a huge distance, right? And you need to bridge this in an integrated way. So have some sort of structure that would do all of this work, build these companies, provide them with some capital, help them make the right experiments, the right preclinical experiments, help them reach out to the CROs, eventually build a team, do all this stuff. We didn't have this, right? We didn't have this know-how. We didn't really have anyone that had done it before. And even though we do have good labs, these are not CROs, these are academic labs. So it's harder for you to do the right experiment in the right way in this environment. I think this is changing. I've been having some conversations lately. I've spoken to Axel Bio, even the folks at GIM, the TT office at GIM. So I think things are changing in Portugal. I'm very excited. We, of course, have BioVents, but also other people investing in Portugal. We have 3XP with Raul. We have Basinov. We are also in, Vesalius is investing in Portugal. So we have specialized capital. We have some structures here. Maybe I think give it another 5 years and we'll be in a very different position. That's my bet on where we were and where I think we're going.
And Isabel, and you guys, where do you fit in this ecosystem? You tend to take lower risk later stage, you come in earlier, so if David wants to create a company, would you guys join in?
So we don't have a specific fund just for biotech. We have big funds, which makes us to be able to invest in larger companies. So we are investing mainly in companies that already have the clinical tests or are at least in phase 2 of them. So here I would say that Iberis can fill the gap in Portugal by being able to invest in later stages, as we don't have, so let's say funds cannot have a lot of concentration to a company. So if we have a small funds, then we cannot do a huge investment in one company, which will cause a lot of concentration. So with this big fund that doesn't invest only in biotech, we can have the portfolio effect and we can benefit from diversification, which is crucial to invest in biotech. Biotech works if you have scale. So if we have a lot of companies in a portfolio, the survival rate and the success rate, it's quite low, unfortunately. It's the nature of the industry, it's part of it. So we need to have a set of companies, a portfolio, to make this work. So either we have funds specialized in this area, and we find a lot of companies in Europe, but less in Portugal. We think Portugal doesn't have enough dimension to have a specific fund just for this, on which we can build a portfolio, so we can benefit from diversification. Or we have a big fund it's a generalist fund that can benefit from the portfolio effect because we invest in different industries. That said, this means that we can invest in later stages, which is something rare in Portugal for biotech. Actually, in most of the VC ecosystem. So I would say we can benefit companies by keeping part of the capital here. At these stages, usually companies look for capital abroad, and this makes a lot of sense because then you have knowledge coming from different investors, different parts of the world, geographies, more specialized investors that add a lot of value, but you can actually keep part of it here, and it's important there are players that also fill this gap.
And Alexandre, I was thinking back, again, when I was entrepreneur and knocking at the doors of international people, trying to get money. Well, Barcelona did not have a biotech ecosystem 15, 20 years ago. It simply did not exist to begin with. So what lessons can we learn from what happened in Catalonia, even more than the rest of Spain on the sector? And do you have any specific recommendations of what was the defining moment that changed the ecosystem there?
Well, I wish I had the final solution, but I have to say that you're totally right. 20 years ago, the ecosystem in Barcelona was not like the one we have now. Just as an example, so last year with Cash Impulse, the initiative I was explaining before, we achieved a very important milestone, which is the 10th anniversary. So we have been running this program for 10 years. And we started thinking when we launched this program in 2015, and we were the only program in all of Spain that supported early stage projects for like this kind of innovation dimension. And if you go now and you see the landscape of initiatives that are in the ecosystem, it's crazy. I mean, you have like a very nice combination of like local public initiatives coming from local governments, also from the Spanish government. You have other philanthropic institutions that are also contributing with initiatives and like investing as well. And we have a lot of VC that have opened offices in Barcelona and that have contributed to this have this mature ecosystem. And without realizing, I think, all these different companies together, they have built a very interesting innovation pipeline. And I think that has helped a lot of projects and prospective entrepreneurs to find in the ecosystem, in the local ecosystem, the resources that they need at each moment. So if you are in a research center and you're interested in learning about entrepreneurship, you can find the right initiatives that will support you to do that. But in the case, on the other hand, you have been supporting or leading a project and you are like reaching clinical trials or like a very mature stages or even commercialization, and you need like some big rounds of money from private investors, you have that as well in the ecosystem. So you have all the tools and this very nice pipeline that can help all those different entrepreneurs and different companies that have been appearing in the ecosystem. For Portugal, of course, I'm not an expert because we are based in Barcelona, but I think it's an asset here is that you have excellent science. That reminds me a little bit of the Barcelona situation because you have excellent research institutions and excellent research projects and discoveries, and you have talent. You have also a very strong clinical network, which is very important. And I would say that you have also the culture of this collaboration across hospitals and academic institutions, and I think that's a very important asset. So that's very important for the ecosystem. So my piece of advice, or thinking about the model of Barcelona, would be to keep offering to entrepreneurs, especially those that are in early stages in the academic environment, these tools for early stage projects, so that they can learn more, they can get the skills and the tools and the resources, so they can get encouraged to transfer these assets outside the laboratory. So I think it's important to fill this gap. So just replicating this mechanism that we are applying in Barcelona, I think that would contribute a lot for the ecosystem.
Very, very interesting. And you touched some point that I will challenge Stephan on, which is consistency, correct? So 20 years, 10 years of consistency policies. Can we do that here? Have we done that here? Or there is a structural limitation on this ability to play long term? Because for tech it worked, correct? So after 15 years, the ecosystem is there.
No, I think the baseline is to have the research and the science, and that we have for sure. And then the other baseline is to have the capital. We're starting to have that. But again, I think that there's still stuff that is missing, which has more to do with the global ambition and the global outlook of the entrepreneurs themselves. I think that is really something that it does not depend on governments. It depends on people, on the entrepreneurs themselves. Because as we all see across the world in many ventures, it's not the idea that triumphs, it's the execution of the idea. And it's the same in biotech or in any other area of investment. And so I think we sometimes lack the speed of execution. It's not because you don't have the right labs, it's because you don't move fast enough yourself. And so I think that is still lacking, and there's nothing we can do in terms of policy to, I think we need that ambition. When we saw people like Cristina Fonseca or Virgílio in Suor and others, what they have is a sheer willingness to get things done at a speed and a level of ambition that is very rare in entrepreneurs in general, but particularly rare when you are used to doing research over decades. So everything takes time. And so, of course, that level of ambition that you see entrepreneurs being picked by the very great biotech funds in the world, the ones that you deal with every day in Pictet, you see that those entrepreneurs are very, very driven, very, very aggressive. It doesn't matter if they're in biotech or in, they will move the world to get things done. I think we need that sort of attitude. So it's not only a question of time, and we cannot wait for the state. We don't need more laws. We need attitude. I think that's the fundamental thing that is still missing in the ecosystem.
Which brings me back to you, also were abroad and came back. So do we fix it by increasing immigration and bringing those executives to Portugal, or by increasing exports and sending the technologies out there to be managed by other people?
Well, it's just... Okay. Feel free to take it. So I think that's a very good question, because biotech, the CEOs I see and that I usually see tend to be older folks. They tend to come from pharma experience. They're a bit different from like the pure tech CEOs, which we also do digital health investments in. So it's very funny because we really pick different teams for each, right? So if it's a digital guy, we want them execution, aggressive. With the pharma ones, we would like to have them be aggressive, but it's a different type of aggressiveness, because usually these are over 50 and have done a lot. These guys, you can't just create them in Portugal, because we don't even have pharma here. Not really. We have Bial and Ovion, but not much else. So I think you do have to bring them in. And the funny thing is we're seeing a lot of them come in to Portugal for personal reasons. So I think there's a good opportunity there to use the fact that we have a wonderful country for many reasons, and people are moving more and more here to try to maybe jumpstart some the ecosystem with some of the IP that we have here. We can also bring foreign IP and generate companies here. That's fine too, but definitely not export, because export means the value is going to be mostly outside of Portugal. That's what I think. If you just export the IP, that's what I think.
Then I would, which I think I tend to agree on it. I would focus more a little bit now on the digital side of the ecosystem, because there, in theory, the tech skill set is more replicable. I think it needs a little bit of knowledge from the regulatory side. We have, of course, the first healthcare unicorn in Portugal being a digital health company that is going very, very well for the majority of us here in this panel, I would say, as investors. But so how can we make more Swords, more Virgilios, and are you guys seeing that or not, correct? Are the next generation of digital companies knocking in your doors or not?
Building on what David was saying, definitely yes, and I think a lot of companies and founders are moving to Portugal not only for personal reasons, they are coming maybe for three other reasons. We have great talent here, and we have great universities, so it's very easy to just recruit from Portugal. These companies usually are also very attractive for Portuguese talent, so there is kind of a match between the two things, and we benefit a lot from that. And Portuguese universities are known worldwide, so here definitely we have the talent. And competitive talent for them. Second factor I would add is that for a lot of companies, they want to enter in Europe, and Portugal works as the gate. We have good regulatory entities here. Infarmed, for instance, has a great reputation. So Portugal also benefits from being under the European entities. These companies, usually they are based in US, so they already have their headquarters there. They are doing some part of the trials there, but they want to enter and to also sell in Europe, and we are a gate for that. And third, I would say we are also very competitive in producing part of the consumables, part of hardware, all of these things that are actually needed for medtech, for biotech. We are good on that. We have the plastic industry. We have several industries that can work and partner with biotech, and they are very competitive. If we compare with the US prices, if we compare with other European countries, we are actually good. We have quality, and we are competitive. We have good prices. So this attracts a lot of companies to move here. If we have a good regulatory framework, if we work as a gate to enter in Europe, even commercially, we are a small market, so they can test the technology here with a low risk. Why not?
I think that on the digital side, picking up on this longevity theme, there is definitely a lot that could be done. Because, I mean, the beauty of this digital technology is that there's always new waves, and they're quite fast. And indeed, now with the confluence between AI and health tech, there will be an opportunity to create new global champions in multiple areas. I think what Sword did was incredible, but there's an opportunity to create many other types of companies in different areas. And one of the silver linings of what you just said of foreign companies coming here is that people are also getting trained inside entrepreneurial companies that come from abroad, and hopefully some will get out and do their own companies, as we've seen in tech also. And I think we'll see that increasingly in biotech and in digital health.
I'm very excited about digital health, very much so. We did an investment just recently, just came out. I'm very excited about it, especially because of generative AI and all that we're doing. So we have these huge problems right now all over the world in the healthcare system. We have too few doctors, chronic and aging, longevity. You're talking about chronic disease. That's not going to go away unless all the old people die. So that's a problem that's going to stick around. And we have this has been going on for years, but it's more and more we're having price pressure on the healthcare system. So we need to increase efficiency dramatically. And AI, generative AI, can do that, and it's already doing that. I mean, there's a really funny story. Do you know the story about the insurance company? So there's this company called Script AI. What they do is they've managed to help healthcare providers, hospitals, make the claims to the insurance companies much faster, right? So this created a problem for the insurance companies because now they had to pay all these claims, which were being very efficient. So the insurance companies got another company to then another AI company to respond to the claims. So what you have right now in the US market is AI companies fighting each other, just no humans, just fighting each other on the claims. So it's a tremendous market. We're very excited about it. Of course, you can also use it to in imaging, to diagnose, to do diagnosis. It's just we think it's a great space to be in, as you know, because the fund that I'm in, you used to be there before, and there was a clear transition from just biotech and digital health. Yeah, it's a very exciting space.
Before I go to the next question, if there are questions in the room, please raise your hands, and I'll happy to integrate your questions into the very good conversation we're having here. But going on AI, and you mentioned the US 3 times, Isabel mentioned Portugal as a test market. Is Portugal a test market for the US in healthcare? Because for sure in tech we see that we could do some things here and then eventually if you do it in English it works in the US. Is our healthcare system a good test door or should those guys just go and do it in the US to begin with?
I'm not going to be very nice here, but I think the US is a great test market for the US. I think in the end, what we've seen, and Sword went through this, is you test it here, and then before you can raise money in the US, you have to test it in the US. Otherwise, you can't raise money there. They just don't want to do it. So, yeah, you can grow it here a little bit, but in the end, you have to go to the US if you're going to go to the US. That's our experience, at least.
No, actually, even if there's a small market, sometimes it happened in the past where people couldn't go to the US immediately because it was too expensive or something. Will say, go to Holland. That's a small market, sophisticated, where there's willingness to pay, and people actually reply to emails, which is, you know, a difference regarding Portugal, right? Where people don't reply to your email, so you cannot work with the corporate because the corporates don't reply to emails, and we've seen actually in many of our unicorns that they become big all over the world until finally someone in a Portuguese corporate, you know, takes a meeting with them. That's something that needs to change as well. It's not, again, nothing to do with the state. It's the problem is with the private sector. But I would say yes. I mean, the problem with staying here for too long, tech or biotech, a lot of people, because they know someone in hospital A, B, or C, they will say, oh, no, let's do this here in a hospital, this and that, because it's a well-known brand. And then they're there like for 3 years wasting their time, right? When they should just get on a plane immediately, form a partnership with whatever university hospital in the US, go there if they let you in at this stage, and try to get it done in the real market, because that's where you're going to make it. And the second thing is, I think that the other pitfall that Portuguese digital health companies and sometimes diagnostics companies do is to not only try to test, but to essentially take the results and then try to use that to even expand in Europe. It doesn't even happen. It doesn't even work in Europe if you test in Portugal. So it's basically just, in general, a waste of time, except for the research part. The research part is very efficient. It's cost efficient, unfortunately for us, because that's mean that the salaries are very low of our researchers. But that's basically about it. But for you to take the next step, you need to surround yourself with people that have done it, which are these 50-something-year-olds that actually have done it. So you cannot surround yourself with the people that are around you. You have to go abroad and get these people, and sometimes they're already here because they have moved here for one way or the other. And for that you need money, and then you go back to the where is the money, and then we go back to do you know who are the investors you have to speak with. There's already a few here, but again, if you are world class, there's money out there. I'm sure, David, you know this better than anyone nowadays. I mean, there's money. If there's world class, there's money from somewhere.
Well, and I think we have statistics in our group that all the VC funds worldwide, that the good ones, have record amounts of money under management. No one is raising a smaller fund than before. And the market has selected the people that were good from the people that weren't good. So we see clearly that on the market there is record amounts of money in the market. It's not 21 where you could just knock at the door and get money, but good money, there is records amounts of money in the market. I keep looking towards my left to see if there is questions on the audience or not, so feel free, José, to join in. I won't be able to name everyone by first names in the audience, so don't give that expectation. As there is no AI tool at Tax Park, we'll submit that as a recommendation to Felipe and Simon for next year.
Well, thank you. There is so technology is changing very fast. I'm picking up on this enthusiasm on the digital, on your specialization, your enthusiasm. But technology is changing so fast that the frontier between what is digital and what is not, particularly if we talk about health, is disappearing. So technology companies are now starting to going beyond digital markers. So they're starting to either develop or acquire sensors to measure stuff in your urine, in your blood, in your saliva. Drug companies are now starting to be worried about how do we find the exact patient that will have a good response. And all of those are algorithms, all of those either machine learning or Gen AI. So the barrier, what is a purely digital and what is a non-digital company is, I believe, disappearing. So does this make your life evaluating projects? Actually, I don't care about that. So if one comes to you, so I don't care if your life is easy or not, sorry, it's the wrong question. What I ask you, if I come to you, in abstract, with a business that is a hybrid between one technology plus AI, say one biological science-based something plus AI, is this more or less appealing to you?
But for us, because we invest in both areas, it would be, it depends, it would be acceptable. So, and then whether it's more or less appealing, it depends really on the business, right? So, I think my knee-jerk reaction would be, a lot of people these days are just attaching AI or deep tech. Deep tech is even worse. People just throw around the word deep tech. Nobody, I think, knows what it means. But people are just attaching AI to everything. So we tend to be careful with that. But I agree. I mean, we've looked at a lot of companies, and I think we've invested in, no, we didn't end up investing, but companies that were right on the borderline between what we would call digital health and biotech. But usually we consider these to be digital health companies that have kind of a wet lab part also. But yeah, I don't think it would be less appealing. I think these days, you know, AI is what they say, AI is eating the world or something. I think it's definitely a place where if you have something cool, I think people want to look at it. I don't know if you guys feel the same way though, because there's the kind of wet lab component to it, which is more biotech.
So the only nuance to what you said is that some funds like us are not, you know, in the contract we have with our investors, we cannot do regulated stuff, or we cannot do certain things which we are precluded from doing. Having said that, I think that the entrepreneurs that, you know, in this area that excite us more have a global outlook. So if they think that they should get the hardware piece done in this country and the AI done there and put all this together. In fact, we're now closing a deal, which is a Danish, British, Portuguese deal. And it's a conjunction of several companies, several technologies, several portfolios of patents. And so but it demonstrates that the team behind it has a global outlook and a global reach, which is very different from looking locally and doing the path, which is a hard path when it's regulated, but sometimes it's very limited. And so what we look for are entrepreneurs that think globally, act globally, get hold of the resources they need, wherever they are in the world, and they want to sort of reach out to the best pieces of the puzzle to put together the whole story, and that makes a difference. I'm not sure if I made myself understood, but it's more a question of attitude and outlook rather than doing something very deep in your lab and kind of not understanding what's happening outside of your wet lab.
Yeah, I agree. I would say that AI per se doesn't make the products, the technology more or less attractive. What happens is it might make sense for the product to work, and if it does, you actually don't need to produce it by yourselves. It's fine if you just outsource, if you manage the situation. Like having it and being in-house, I would say it's not a huge advantage, and having it independently of in-house or not, it depends on the product itself. It doesn't make it more or less attractive. There are other variables that would explain that. So I would not add AI or even the AI word, which is very, as David was saying, the AI word and deep tech, which sounds very sexy, but on the end, if it doesn't add anything to the product or doesn't make it more differentiated, no, it's not a plus.
And I would ask you, how much has been AI part of the projects that you guys have seen now over the last 2 years? Is it the sole thing you do? Is AI for everything in the projects? Or is it even really AI, or is it more like I use scheduling that is an AI tool and some an AI company?
Well, actually, I have to say that a few years back, we didn't even have like any business area that was eligible in the program, including AI or any kind of digital component. But we felt obliged to include it. So we have 4 business areas. One is artificial intelligence or digital health. Then we have medical devices, therapeutics, and we have diagnostic tests. And it was very complex for us because that meant that we had a pool of experts that helped us review the proposals that we receive that were not familiarized with artificial intelligence, and we had to build and you pull from scratch, so trying to understand and to give a proper scoring of those evaluations, and also to understand the potential of that, if the AI was necessary or it wasn't necessary. And it was a challenge for the program. But I wouldn't say that still that's the majority of projects that we receive. Actually, I was looking at the numbers before coming to this panel, and I saw that we have been supporting around 40 projects from Portugal, and we have like only 2 that are in the digital health area. Like almost 70% of them, they are therapeutics, and we have like a few of them medical devices. But digital health is not something that, so we get some proposals from Spain and from some technological centers, but not from Portugal. So it's not been a challenge for us in the program so far, and it's not marked like something that, some kind of criterion that makes that a project is more important for us or not, depending on if it includes AI or not.
Which is quite interesting for me, because if we were to look at the universe of companies, I would say the ratio is not necessarily that the vast majority of them are biotech companies in the end, which is quite interesting. We've covered a lot on the therapeutic side, and I keep looking, so if there is questions, raise your hand, so I'll put you after this one. And we haven't touched, exactly on this segment, we haven't touched the non-human touch part of biotechnology at all, and I know you have less of an investment thesis there, but Isabel and Stephan, I'm pretty sure you could touch. So how do you look at things that are not necessarily treating humans, correct? The more, I was going to call it industrial biotechnology, but you don't necessarily need the factory, but products that are less regulated. It can be supplements, they can be industrial components that you need to manufacture and produce on. Is this areas you cover and things that you would invest in?
Yes, we have a great example in our portfolio for that. We have Avextra. It's a company that produces medicinal cannabis. It's a German company, actually, but Portugal benefits from a very favorable regulatory framework for that. So the company moved some part of the operations here to produce and to actually test this. So yeah, that's something we have a huge advantage. Again, we benefit from the labor, very competitive. We benefit from the regulatory framework that it's also very favorable in Portugal, and by having like all the facilities, we have good labs, good universities. They partner with universities here too. So yes, definitely, that's a company with requires a lot of research. A little bit less of tech. So it's a great example of industrial company in this area that moved to Portugal from Germany. Yeah.
Yes, I think that particularly supplements or ingredients, B2B ingredients are a very interesting area. The less regulated, the better, of course. Or even if regulated, if you know, Portugal might have, or the company might have a specific moat, a specific reason why it's unique, and it's easier to understand that business and to reach scale instead of a sort of a typical, I'm not saying supplements in a B2C way, right? It's not a website to sell supplements, but it's something that I think we are seeing more and more opportunities across Europe and even in Portugal. And so it's an area that has you know, a lot of potential and that we're quite keen on keeping on supporting.
And Simon? It was done?
It was more or less like that, but I would like to expand that a little bit. First, thank you very much for the discussion. I would like to hear your thoughts on the trends that you are seeing, not allowing you to say AI, but what kind of other technological trends and also market/application trends that you are seeing as the next wave for your investments?
I can go. So I won't mention AI, but I have to do 2 tracks, right? So I'll have to say digital therapeutics and digital and health and biotech. So in biotech, okay, I'll tell you a negative trend, which is I think by now pretty clear to everybody, but it really popped up 2 years ago at JPM, which is oncology is not as hot anymore. So I think pharma in general kind of caught up with the idea that, I mentioned this before, the oncology market is a bit saturated, it's hard to differentiate. So they've moved on from it a little bit. And also clinically, I mean, if we're being honest, there's been a significant amount of progress, so the window for progress has become narrower in most cancer types. That's not to say the oncology is irrelevant, it's just no longer the leading category. We're very excited about metabolic, not necessarily just for obesity. Obviously, everybody's excited about that. But metabolic is very interesting. We have done an investment in the area. That's a huge problem. You know, chronic kidney disease, MASH, all these metabolic diseases, they're related to obesity. They're kind of the endpoint of obesity, and they're a tremendous problem, unsolved. Cardiovascular, I think, is back. Neurodegenerative, very interesting, but you need to find a good way to get into it. So, for instance, we're looking at a company now that's looking at agitation in Alzheimer's, and which is a big problem. It's actually one of the biggest problems for these patients, which is they get really agitated and aggressive. It doesn't solve the problem of the underlying disease, but it makes the patients and the caregivers' lives easier. This is the sort of stuff we would look at. I think that's very exciting. Or disease modifying. In terms of increasing protein degradation is something we're excited about, but that's very kind of nerdy stuff. I don't know if that's what you wanted to hear. On the digital health side, I think things that make physicians' lives easier are a big plus for us. So things that were not addressable before, and that can shorten a procedure by 2 hours for a surgeon. Imaging tools that do that. That's tremendous, right? Because those 2 hours are potentially another procedure so you've just doubled the OR for that surgeon, which is financially very, very interesting. So those are the sort of things I think we're looking at and we're excited about.
Let me just add, from an Iberis perspective, as we are not a specialized VC, we have a selection bias. So the companies that reach us are companies that are at later stages because they know that we don't do small tickets. And they have already kind of clinical trials or the product it's proved. So we don't have a lot of visibility around what's actually trendy, because all these companies that just were created and they are in their first years, and by first years I mean first 5-6 years and until the trials, or more in digital tech until the testing the products a little bit earlier. We don't actually have a lot of visibility on that. So I would just say it's a little bit about waves. 5 years ago, we had a lot of crypto and companies in these areas. Now we have more in medtech. So I would say that this area, it's actually increasing a lot. And in medtech, it's always with AI. So I would it's more sexy, as I said before.
You mentioned AI, we couldn't,
Yeah.
he didn't allow us to mention AI.
I'm kidding, because
Moderator, come on.
because AI is everywhere. I would say it's in 90% of the pipeline. So
Yeah, true. But it's also specifically companies that move to Portugal that we received a lot. They want to test the product here. So I would say companies that are more in medtech that need to do clinical trials.
And Stephan, are there areas of your deal flow that are super rich and you don't really understand why?
No, I mean, what I could add to what David has said is that, of course, we see on the digital side everything that is connected to efficiency. I'm not going to say the word, but, increase the efficiency.
with something.
And then also the connection between different types of the industry players. So, for example, connection to insurance agencies, connection between clinics, connection, the systems that connect all these parts together, particularly when you are upgrading systems inside, so imaging systems that are new and payroll systems, patient systems and so on, which now will have agents. And then you need the connectors, sort of the connectors between all these databases and all these different agents. So there will be, and there are new businesses coming up, particularly in the US, where AI has really sort of penetrated already in a lot of the actors in the healthcare system. You're now building up the connections between those systems, which are these B2B software solutions, that increase the connection and the efficiency. And a big part of that is the insurance companies, because that ultimately that's who pays. And well, that was one of the reasons for success of Sword, for example, right? And so we're seeing a lot of software that has to do with this, multiple connections B2B, or increasing the efficiency within the services of whatever, hospital and clinics and so on.
Very, very clear there. We are 15 minutes away from the close, so questions, please feel free to add them to our conversations. We have one there in the middle.
Do you know that lady's name?
Unfortunately not, but next time I'll bring my Google lenses.
Hello, thank you. A great panel, very interesting things. We talked a little bit about, from the biotech perspective, the interest in bringing some of the CEOs with expertise, mentorship into Portugal. And my question to you, and let me preface that with I am not very knowledgeable about investing, so forgive me if this is a dumb question. But my question is it something that you would tolerate more risk and put money in, but if you were to see a benefit in bringing a CEO in, or are you just looking at investment from the perspective of bringing capital? So would you take a risk to make a benefit for the country? That's my question.
I'll take this one first, sorry, because there are public tools that are helpful in that way, namely Banco Português de Fomento, BPF, with all the issues that people usually raise about these public institutions. They invested a lot of capital into Portuguese funds with the condition that that capital is spent into Portugal. What that has done to Vesalius, because Vesalius, we set up a sidecar for that. What that has done is that it's motivated us very much to, we're already investing in Portugal, but to invest in Portugal and to really try to get the money out. So even though we will never do an investment that is not an investment we believe in, I think we're more willing to take additional risk and to do investments that we wouldn't to do usually, namely something like bringing in a CEO to start a company here, because of this incentive. So I think there are things that are being done that are not just out of the kindness of our hearts, because we can't be kind with other people's money, So I think there are things that are being done that help with that risk that you were mentioning.
If at least how many times have you changed CEOs in companies, Stephan? Is it part of the investment thesis that you fix the management team?
Actually, very few, but we've had just one of our best performing companies that the existing CEO actually told us, look, I think we're going to need a new CEO because we need someone for the next level. And I thought that was incredibly mature, and I wish some of the other founders would do the same. But I think it's actually it happens quite often, particularly in biotech. I think less so in tech, because the ego of the tech founders is much higher. And so I think it's, the sort of science-based founders are more used to this, understanding that they need different people and different leaders for different stages. And I think that's one of the big advantages of the biotech investment ecosystem, which is much more mature in that sense.
I'll start with you on this one, David, because it's very specific. We see pharma partnerships going up these days. Are those good tools for people to take and onboard on their companies? Are they complexify their investment story? So how do you guys look at those?
Oh, that's a good. So you're asking whether we're seeing pharma partnerships increase in Portugal in particular, or in general, but in Portugal also, right? We have the Tessellate story. I guess CellMaps to a certain extent is a partnership or an exit. Well, it depends how you look at it. But yeah, I think right now we should take everything we can get. I mean, that's my view. As if I had to give an advice, I think if you have sophisticated investors in your cap table already that have invested, and you think you'll have an easy time raising the next rounds, then maybe partnering your assets is not a good idea. Because that will complexify later rounds. But it really depends on your company. I think if your company, if you feel that at that stage it'd be beneficial for you to take a partnership, I think you should. I think we need to get as much pharma eyes on Portugal as possible. I think that is very important, because we don't have pharma here, right? It's not like France or Germany or the UK used to have some there, or the US. So we do need to get their attention here as much as possible. That is very important, I would say. So I don't know, I think it depends on the deal, but I wouldn't necessarily put it as a negative.
And does an organization like Caixa, La Caixa Group, have ever role in bridging the larger companies into the smaller early stage ecosystem?
Actually, we do. So when we organize this training program for early entrepreneurs, we try to bring like experts from industry and so that they can have the experience of what's going on in that specific sector of industry. And it's something that they also appreciate because they are scouting all the time. So we have seen a lot of opportunities. We have witnessed in the framework of the program opportunities where they have started these partnerships, where they have signed co-development agreements with early stage projects where sometimes they take care of the cost of the IP, filing a patent or maintaining a patent and so on, or you go to national phases in the case of some advanced projects. And that's something that is continuously happening and we like to also to encourage to happen in the framework of the program. So the answer is yes. And I was also listening to David, and I was thinking, I totally right with you. And I was thinking of the example, for example, of AstraZeneca with the R&D hub installed in Barcelona, and it's going to hire like thousands of people. And it's been amazing the impact that has had in the ecosystem. Just that kind of investment, and all of a sudden you see more entrepreneurs, you see more researchers encouraged to start startups, you see more former researchers that are interested in the innovation aspects of the ecosystem and learning and trying to work for AstraZeneca. So I totally agree with you. So you need to have eyes so that you have a more mature ecosystem, but also because you have more opportunities of this, like this co-development assays or agreements that we see in our program. So I totally agree with you. Yeah.
We're approaching the last round, so if there is any pressing question, well, now there we are popping. Okay, good.
Thank you so much for the talk. This discussion is very interesting for us founders. Is amazing. And also as a founder, I'm very curious to know what you think is going to be the next 5 years in terms of capital availability. If interest rates stabilize or come lower, will we see more money coming into higher risk opportunities?
I mean, yeah. I mean, theoretically, yes, in a sense that money will flow into funds and funds will have a pressure to deploy at a global scale, particularly in the US and in North Europe. But then at a local level, that doesn't make a big difference, right? If you look at local funds, they will tend to raise locally, some locally, others internationally, or a mix. And that depends sometimes on other factors, not so much, unfortunately, on the private sector, because there's a big dependence. If you think it's hard to fundraise for a startup, it's much harder to fundraise for a fund, and particularly in South Europe. And so I think more than the interest rates, I think that the fact that there is increasingly specialized capital is really very important. Funds take years to raise, and then they take years to deploy. And so I think that there's already quite a lot of capital around, enough to actually fund the very good, the very best companies. What we're seeing all over from digital, and I think also in biotech, is that you have less companies being invested, but with bigger rounds of capital. So I think there's definitely money already. And it might happen that, in fact, I think the fundraising environment, we were discussing this yesterday at lunchtime, the fundraising environment is getting harder for funds, not easier. Yeah.
Specifically in Portugal, I would say that for the next 3 years, we have a lot of dry powder right now. So there is a lot of capital to be invested. And this comes mainly from public funds that were very favorable. The framework was very favorable in the past years, and now it's changing a bit. But the capital was already fundraised. So there is a lot of money, and this money will be invested in the next years, at least I would say 2, 3. Then it's a little bit uncertain in Portugal. As Stephan was saying, we are highly dependent on public incentives. It's very hard to fundraise from private ones. So I'm not saying that this will change. I'm saying it's uncertain from 3 years on.
I agree 100% what they're saying, but particularly with what Isabel is saying, there's money in Portugal right now, and I keep telling everybody this, and I think we still have a bit of that Portuguese complex where 5 years or 10 years ago we say, oh, there's no money in Portugal, and Stephan has repeated this quite a few times, I think already. So there's money now, and it's going to be around for the next 2 or 3 years, and then who knows. And it's not dependent on the cycle that you're mentioning in particular. This is the money that we have in Portugal is counter-cycle because it's been incredibly hard to raise capital outside of Portugal for most funds, except for some very specific funds. We've raised big funds. But in Portugal, it's been counter-cycle. It's been, I'm not going to say easy, but there's a lot of money around for sure. So that's one thing. The other thing is there's other things influencing fundraising right now that are not just interest rates. There's a lot of instability, and we've seen that stuff like, if you're raising from all over the world, for starters, if you're in Europe, most of the rest of the world doesn't necessarily want to go into Europe. That might be changing a little bit because Trump is weird. So people are going, maybe we're going to put our capital somewhere else. But Europe is not growing that fast. And the Russia war, Russia-Ukraine has really not helped us. So, yeah, it's not obvious that it's going to get better in the next years to fundraise in Europe, at least. Maybe a little bit if Trump goes even crazier. Maybe capital will start outflowing from there, or flowing instead of to the U.S. to Europe. But for now, I don't think it's the easiest time to raise in Europe.
And I would just advise, if money is around, then you can grab it. Don't think about dilution. I think I had a very good Spanish friend, part of the ecosystem, that I think my second thought about being an entrepreneur told me, dilution, people think it applies to economics, but actually a chemical term. So ignore that, get the money and do what you need to do with the money, which is better than not getting the money or not doing anything with it. There was another question somewhere there.
No.
From here to there anymore. So
I knew that.
Elimination.
Thank you. No, we've addressed in a way. So we were discussing the trends for you guys, for GPs, and I was wondering about your understanding of the trends actually moving LPs in incentives, and we've actually addressed it already. So all the geopolitical changes and the changes in technology and AI in biotech, etc. How does that impact raising new funds and the availability of capital for the years to come? But we have addressed it. So if you have any additional comment on how this change resonates with LPs and how that impacts the, let's say, midterm, more so to say, availability of capital.
So I think Nuno is asking. Sorry, it was a bit of echo. I think you're asking if LPs are excited about these trends, right? These AI trends and.
Yeah, I mean, how you guys were raising capital, how you feel the change in LPs, understanding all the changes, and how all of that resonates with LPs.
I mean, it depends on the type of investor. If you're talking about very institutional investors, I think what they're really excited is about your track record. It's the numbers. I think there's some discussion about the trends, but not really. I mean, it's basically, what's the multiple on your invested capital? What was the IRR? What is the DPI, TVPI, and so on and so forth? That's what it is. When you're talking about family offices, it's a little bit easier to sort of tell the story of what you're doing, and for them to understand the concept that you are driving or supporting a specific change in a specific hope avenue, particularly when it comes to these areas which are a little bit more interesting, right? You're extending life, you are saving people, you are making life better, and so on and so on. And so, but I think that ultimately most LPs really look at track record, and it's a very, very competitive world, and it's a very high demand world, and in particularly in Europe, I think the appetite for venture capital is very low, extremely, extremely low. And also we don't have the pension funds that the US system has. We don't have the university endowments. The family offices are often not sophisticated enough to invest that much in this area. Or then the other thing that happens is when they do, they invest in the US, in a US fund. So it's tricky, and I know that across Europe, at the European Commission level, there's things being done to counter this trend, which has been damaging Europe for a long time. And the Braga report was clearly indicating that we needed to change the state of things. But, at the end of the day, people want returns, because otherwise they'll invest in bonds, equities, real estate, another Ferrari or something like that.
And we didn't say this in the intro, but Stephan also heads the National Venture Capital Association for the country, so right on target for him. We'll do a last one, okay? I'll squeeze that one in, and then we'll close with single piece of advice for every one of you to the audience. What do you do or you wouldn't do? You select if it's positive or negative.
Margarida Santos Bravos, já que quero saber nomes. Uma questão, falamos muito em digital.
Can we do it in English, please, for Alexandre? Thank you.
We're talking a lot about digital medtech, late-stage clinical trials, etc. Pharma, actually in Portugal, is almost non-existent. You mentioned Ovion, Bial, maybe Blue Pharma. The rest is mostly sports. Anything to retain talent, actually creating a manufacturing, and in Portugal, any advice for that?
So if I got it correctly, how to retain talent and build manufacturing capacity, so more industrial hardcore type investments.
Alex, do you have AstraZeneca's number?
Yeah, we're talking about something more, starting a little bit smaller than AstraZeneca, but indeed a big fish.
Let me just ask one teasing. Do you guys invest in bricks and mortars? Would you invest in a factory?
We actually do. We are doing that right now, not specifically in this area, but in ingredients in the blue economy. Mm-hmm. And I think an easy answer to that is that when we invest, normally we invest for an ambitious business plan. We know that the people that are required to build that, to execute the business plan, whatever area it is, are very expensive people. And our companies pay very well in general. Because if they're not paying very well and attracting global talent, Portuguese or from anywhere else, they're not going to be able to make it. So I think that this is why it's important to have capital beyond just the brains and the entrepreneurs. If you don't have capital, you cannot retain the talent locally. Again, we go back to the Draghi report. We need capital in Europe. We need capital in every single region of Europe also to get things started. And I think the funds really contribute, and we're going to have actually a report coming out later this month about the impact of private equity and VC in Portugal, and you see that clearly, the level of salaries, the level of exports, the growth rate of the companies, the margins of the companies are way, way better when you have venture capital, private equity funds behind it, because the companies have capital and they're able to invest for the long term, at least for a 10-year period. So I think you need capital, basically, to be able to retain people.
So we don't invest in brick and mortar. My fund in particular, we don't do that. I don't think we're scaled to do that. But to try to answer your question as best I can. You guys could potentially help out, because you private equity also could potentially help out with that sort of business, which would be more like a CRO, smaller CRO, CDMO sort of business. That's a possibility. I strongly believe that trying to bring in an R&D unit from a big pharma or a big biotech would be huge for us, as it was for you. That is not something that we can really do as a grassroots movement. That's something that I think there needs to be a public movement to do that and attract them and create the right conditions for them to come here. But yeah, you can start smaller. We had some trials there, but that's a different business from what we invest in. That's more like a private equity business.
Yeah, we did. In this case, I mentioned before of Extra, we did brick and mortar. So basically, we are supporting them in building the CMO facilities here. But we do that in very specific cases. So I would say it's not something very common. overall in Portugal, for us, it's like very punctual. We do in cases that the product it's already being sold, maybe just a few quantities in a specific market, but it's tested, and the team, it's I would say brilliant. So we need to have a very strong team, and also from an execution point of view, not only from a research, a more clinical one. The team needs to know how to execute. That's why we are building a CMO facility. It's all about execution on the end of the day, going to the market. So I would say very punctual cases. It's not something very common. But it's also, I would say the demand, it's also not that big in the markets, at least for us. So
I'll just add that this happens quite often in the industrial biotech, where you need to, to have an initial plant, an initial factory, a test plant, or then an expansion to actually demonstrate that the product works and to get things going. So sometimes, in industrial biotech, this actually happens quite a bit more than in regular biotech.
And before I go to all of you with the last do's or don'ts for everyone in the room, I'll remind the Fair Journey example, correctly mentioned about attracting an R&D unit. That's the beginning of the story of Fair Journey, that is still today, I think, one of the largest private equity transactions ever on a Portuguese company that happened earlier this year. So it's an interesting go back in time for that one. But now, to close the session, what would you do or don't do if you were on that room and wanted to get money from any one of you guys? Any first takers?
Can start. Well, in our case, it's pretty easy because our programs, they have competitive calls. They open once a year. We receive all the proposals, we review them, and then once you are selected, you start participating. But as a take-home message, I would give like 2 pieces of advice. First is if you want to become an entrepreneur, I'm talking about early stages and young entrepreneurs, just get trained and listen to the advice of the experts. Please don't make mistakes from the beginning. Just try to learn from previous experiences from others that have been in your shoes. And the other thing is that I don't know how you will react, but don't try to keep the control of your assets for as long as you can. Don't give away too much too early. You have resources that you can use to keep developing your asset and building value and validating. You have innovation prizes, you have reimbursable schemes, you have non-dilutive grants and so on. So use those resources, and then later on, you may have to take the decision of if you want to approach a private investor. But if you give away too much too soon, you will struggle to attract investors on good terms because you may have made some mistakes. So that's my piece of advice.
Well, my reaction is I agree with what you're saying. So it's a wise advice that you need to approach VCs investors at the right time, not too early because that creates problems, which we don't need to go into here now. But not too late either, because if it's too late, then by then you may have missed your opportunity for your acceleration. So it's tricky. But I would agree with you. So my advice is, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to get capital, read up on it a lot. Stephan touched on this. There's a lot of public information that you can read just to understand how these things work, what a VC fund is, because we're not investing our money, right? So it's not like we're not giving it to you because we're mean. It's that we have our own investors that give us money, and we need to return capital to them. So if you always bear that in mind when you're talking to us, you'll actually have a much more fruitful interaction with us, because we also have to answer to our own investors. But I would say that, I mean, just do the work, and remember that it's not an elevator pitch, right? Usually, at least with me, and I think most investors I know, you're going to have many conversations over the course sometimes of months or years before the investment actually materializes. So I would say, do your homework and start the conversation early. And if we're not ready to invest or you're not ready to get the money yet, we'll just let you know. Well, okay, we'll keep working with you, and eventually, once it's, because that's our job. It's not because we're nice. So eventually, when the company's ready, we would very much like to invest. So just start the conversation early, and yeah, that's it.
This brings me back to the first question, on which I answered that be sure that the market exists and the company can scale. This is crucial, and by scaling I don't mean Portugal or even Europe, I mean really global scale. And US, you need to be sure that the company actually can scale in US. US, it's a very specific market, has different types of consumers from the European ones. Regulatory-wise, it's also very different, so be sure the company can actually scale and has this potential. Second, build the right team, and not only people with a very strong academic record and that can help you a lot, that for sure they are needed, especially at the early stage, but also people that can execute more for the later stages. This is crucial. People that will bring you present you, introduce you to the right investors, to the right clients that understand about the market. This is fundamental. And third, be surrounded overall by people in your ecosystem, not only in your team, but go to events, travel, meet people in your ecosystem. Usually this will bring a lot of value, investment-wise, product-wise, a lot of things can happen on that talent-wise. More in terms of capital, there is a lot of capital in the market, I agree with Stephan, but it's always easier to find local capital first because people know each other, so it will be easier to reach them. Try to figure out who are the right players to support you locally, if not globally for sure.
Well, after all this wonderful advice, what can I say? I think that the key is to think that if you want to be an entrepreneur, you are basically in a position to do sales. You're a salesperson, essentially. Not selling your molecule or whatever diagnostic you're doing, but you're in the business of selling a dream to the people that are going to work with you so that they can grow professionally. You're selling the idea of amazing returns and a huge market to your investors. You're selling, the opportunity to grow together to your partners in the business, to your suppliers, to, whatever partner you need. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, think of yourself as a salesperson, really. If you don't think you have the sort of the nature to be selling, it'll be very, very difficult to get it done. Because then, of course, in addition to selling the dream, you have to sort of deliver the dream. That's another business. But you still have to be that inspiration for everybody around you. So that'll be my advice. Think yourself as, the lead inspirer of the whole thing.
And with these very inspiring words, please join me in thanking this excellent panel that I think had the privilege to have here today. Thank you so much.